All right, welcome to BenThere. This is episode 4 of season 3. I can't wait to get into this, so I'm not going to waste any time. I just want to, first off, welcome my guest, Miss Claire Hauxwell. She is not only an author, not only an expat coach, but she's an all-around badass. So, Claire, welcome to the show. I can't wait to talk about that word badass later, but thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm good, Ben. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Definitely.
That
Yeah,
I've committed
finally,
to
right?
you.
Because now that this all works out. But as we talked prior to coming on the air, whatever it's called now, I want you to introduce yourself because I want people to understand it from you, hear from you. But you're in Switzerland right now.
I am.
Right?
I am in
Tell us all
Zug.
about you.
So yeah, I live in Zug, Switzerland, which is about 30 minutes outside of Zurich. And we've been here for 3.5 years. I've been expats for almost 14. And we've been moving around, my husband and I, for his job. Is the reason that's been pushing us around the world. This is our 5th expat assignment. And we've lived in Geneva, Brussels, Mexico City, Johannesburg, and now Zug. And we have 2 daughters. So I'm raising 2 TCKs.
Third culture kids. I got to make sure that's clear. But yeah, third culture kids.
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. And married to a corporate dude. And and I have a dog. And we've just been moving around. And so far, so good. It's been fun. We said we were going to go away for a 2-year assignment. And that was almost 14 years ago.
And you're from Michigan, right?
I am originally from Michigan, outside of Detroit. I went to Michigan State, go green.
See, my former bosses in Shanghai would be loving you right now. So yeah, they were all Michigan State people.
Well, they were good people.
They're Spartans, yeah, definitely Spartans. I didn't realize you were in Johannesburg. Where did you have kids at the time?
Yeah.
Where did they go to school?
The American International School, AISJ.
Okay, I don't know if that was the exact system, because the reason I bring that up is the people that I work for in Shanghai had a sister school in Johannesburg. For the life of me, I can't think of the name of it right now, but I don't think it was that one. So, but you're forgiven.
There were.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So we've been kind of a little bit all over the place.
Yeah.
I am a terrible linguist. I don't know how to speak many languages. I can butcher them pretty well.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of French, a little bit of German, and a little bit of, more Spanish than the other ones. I've been, I am a coach. I coach expat accompanying supportive spouses, which I like to call badasses. I don't use the term trailing spouse.
Good.
Because I think it's a terrible moniker. And I also wrote the book Badass Abroad.
Oh, we're gonna get into that. Don't worry about that. Yeah, that's
so. And I coined that term badass because I just don't think we as accompanying spouses, whether men or women, or they don't see their value sometimes. So we don't trail. We do lots of other things. So
I totally respect that. Yeah. As a son of, my mom was a badass, if you will. And my dad was definitely, a corporate guy. So I totally understand that. So.
Yeah. If he can't do his job if I don't do mine. So
absolutely. 100%.
I view what I do is very valuable. I don't get a paycheck, but we've had some very candid conversations in my house with my children about how hard mom works.
Absolutely. And you do, trust me. As someone who grew up that same exact way as your daughters do, I totally understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So, yeah. No, I thank you for sharing. Was as growing up in Michigan, were you ever did you ever think this is where you'd be today?
Absolutely not. My mom is an immigrant. She is from Malta.
Oh, okay.
So I unknowingly grew up in a, I had another culture, but I didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
How did they end up in Michigan? Or your mom, anyway.
I don't actually know how they ended up there. They
Mhm.
just they immigrate. There's a large Maltese population outside of Detroit, so I think that they probably just went there. I have, it's kind of like, why does anybody go? Well, we know somebody there, so we're going to go there. I'm assuming that's how it happened. So they immigrated after World War II, and then yeah, so I grew up outside of Detroit. My parents met and got married, and I have an older brother. And yeah, we just lived what seemed to be this, like, normal nuclear family. And then when I turned 18, I went to college and then graduated from college and never came back.
Go Spartans. Yeah, go
Yep.
Spartans. Yeah.
So I moved around. I met my husband, and then we started moving around the US.
Mm-hmm.
And so I haven't lived at home since I was really 18. And then one day he just kind of said, "Hey, I got this opportunity."
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay. So it never was one of those things where we kind of thought we would move abroad. I mean, I've already, when I was 18, I got my first passport and went to Europe on a study abroad with some friends. And
Where'd you go?
we kind of did it was like a tour all over the
Oh, cool.
continent. So we didn't really stay in one place. So it was kind of it kind of gave you that like backpacking through Europe feel.
Mm-hmm.
So did that, and our jobs would bring us different places. I went to Mexico a lot for my job. My husband was traveling to China a lot. He did a lot of Asia stuff. And then, yeah, it's funny because I can remember I had a conversation with somebody on an airplane once, and this was like just before Dave came home. My husband's name is Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Came home and asked me about moving abroad, and I said, I was talking to this woman on an airplane, and I said, "Oh, where are you coming from?" Because I'm that nosy person that sits on airplanes and talks to people.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't know. She said something like Croatia or Serbia. I don't even know. Like somewhere where I was like, what? Like it was just such an like we were flying to like St. Louis or somewhere.
Oh, no,
And
no, no, no. I'm a Cub fan. You can't fly to St. Louis. Come on now.
Well, that's where I lived. Sorry, buddy.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, I'll allow it for today, but let's move on.
you.
Moving along.
Thank you. So anyway, long story short, she's telling me, and she's like, "Well, I'm an expat. I live overseas." I didn't even know what that was back then. Like I knew people lived places, but I didn't really know what that was. And so this woman was telling me about, I think her husband must have been with like an embassy or something. And yeah, so she was like, "No, it's pretty amazing. We've lived here and we've lived here." And I just thought it was like this cool thing, right? And then I think like maybe a month or two later, Dave came home and was like, "What do you think about moving to Prague?" I was like,
"Oh wow,
what? Yeah." And so it was kind of this cool.
Did you guys have kids yet?
We had I think Elise, my daughter she was about a year when this started. So our first daughter was born in the States. And it just kind of snowballed. We didn't end up actually moving to Prague. We did all the stuff to move to Prague. I quit my job. We were supposed to move, I think 3 weeks. The movers were supposed to come. And then Dave's company was like, "Just kidding, you're not moving to Prague."
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So my first experience with being an expat was like this total shit show.
Yeah.
We went through the whole, went on the look-see, then went back and got the house, and then, did the whole thing. Kid had RSV while we were overseas looking for like, it was just a disaster, right? And then we get it all going. And they said, "No, you're not going." And I was like, I quit my job.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
This isn't going to be helpful. So Yeah, so I did that, we always talk about limbo as an expat. I did that limbo for a long time because they said, well, we're going to go. We just don't know where
Yeah.
or when. And it was kind of like, what the hell? So we
I'm
did that
laughing
for
because
a
I get
while.
it. I'm laughing because I get
Right.
it. Not, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was, and then, I think like 10 months later, they decided that we were moving to Geneva. And of course, I was pregnant again. So
Yeah.
it was perfect timing. That's a joke because it was
I know I'm laughing. I get it. I know
not
you, so I get it.
perfect
Yeah. I should probably like say to the people watching that you and I do know each other a little bit.
Yeah, we do.
This isn't the first like conversation we've ever had. Yeah, through Sunday Bean, little shout out to Sunday. Yeah, you and I connected through the facilitator program. So yeah, this is I know you and you make me laugh. So I totally get that. So no, that's good. So you've been okay. So you've been all I want to say technically all over the world, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
So what
except I've never been to Asia.
really see that's my background.
I know.
What's funny, people ask me all the time, like, you've been everywhere. I'm like, yeah, but I've never been to Mexico, even though it's like just south of the US. I've never been there. Been to Canada, finally. I didn't go to Canada until I was in my 20s. But yeah, so I've been all over most continents. I haven't been to Australia yet or Mexico. So South America and Australia, and I guess Antarctica technically. But yeah, no, I get that. But that said, the fact that you've been all over the place, what's the best and worst part of expat living then? International lifestyle living.
Oh, because
Best and worst. So take your time.
it's
I'll
so
sit back.
glamorous all the time, right? It's just
Yeah. Yeah.
all
I
I
can
do
jump
is
into this too, but I'm going to
glamorous
let you
things.
talk. So go ahead. So
I mean, the best parts are like, the traveling and, experiencing other cultures and, all the obvious things, right? But I think one of the cool things about it for me is meeting all the people. I meet people that I would never meet had I just still stayed in Michigan and or even anywhere that I was living in the US. I mean, I wouldn't have met those people. I wouldn't have, I have best friends that, live in Hong Kong and Barcelona.
I did that. Little side note. I did that for a while. Yeah. That was my first international experience was Hong Kong. So, but back, this dates me, but it was back 1983. So, I mean, it was still under British rule. So it was an easy place to acclimate to back because it was all English speaking and not what it is today. But yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, but that's like, I think that's kind of one of the cool things, right? It's like, people from all over. And the other thing that's kind of cool too is that the expat world is a little place, right? It's not that big. So, like whenever somebody new pops up on your radar, it's like you Facebook friend them and you're like, who else do we know?
Yeah.
And then you look and you're like, oh, they know so-and-so. How do they know so-and-so? So you shouldn't, one tip, never talk bad about anybody in the expat world because
it'll come back
someone knows somebody.
Yeah.
But like, I think one of the worst parts is, you're far away from your family. You don't get to celebrate the birthdays. You miss out on graduations and weddings and all that sort of thing. I would say, like I haven't been invited to a wedding in I don't know how long, yeah. I mean, just because it's obvious, I'm probably not going to go there. Ironically, they also don't think I might send it a gift, but whatever. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah. I'd still reach out. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny, so like, that's hard. And as I think, this, as parents age and you want to be there and it's just not as easy. I think now being in Europe, I can get home pretty quickly. I can get home within 24 hours very easily. When I lived in Africa, I always had this, like, it's going to take me 2 days because the flight itself was going to take me 25 hours.
Well, I can relate to that because my wife and I got offered jobs in China just this past, summer. But the issue wasn't when I was in China before, when as a single guy, like it pre-COVID, pre all that stuff. And so I could just hop on a plane and flights were cheap and all that. So you can't guarantee that anymore. Like it's a different world right now that we're living in. So
Right.
Yeah.
I gotta take these out.
It's all right. I can hear you. I can hear you perfectly. So you're all good. Oh, maybe not. You just hit mute. Look at your mic.
See, I'm not good at this. Yeah, I'm good now.
It's all right. You probably just cursed me or something. We'll just say that. I bleeped it out. So
I promise. No, so that's my number one thing. And the other thing for me, I think that's hard, the worst part of being an expat, I never feel 100% comfortable. Like I always feel like I'm fucking something up. Like I'm doing something wrong. I'm saying things that are wrong. I'm putting the garbage out incorrectly. I'm not doing
even after 14 years.
Well, I've doing it in 5 different places.
That's
it's
true.
Like once you get used to it, then it's like, just kidding. Now you have to learn it all over again.
Yeah.
And I mean, in some places it's easier than others. I mean, we lived in South Africa and it was English speaking, so I didn't stress so much about it.
Yeah.
And the culture there is much more relaxed. Whereas now I don't speak German and the culture here is much more, there's a lot more rules, so maybe they're unwritten rules, but there's, there's just rules. And so, yeah, I always feel like I'm not exactly 100% doing things right.
So what have you learned the hard way about being an expat? Is there anything specifically that you can think of, or is that just in general?
I mean, life gets easier, even though it's like, I don't ever feel 100% comfortable. Like I feel comfortable going to the recycling center now. Like it's taken me a while, but I feel comfortable doing it. I'm not going to 100%, but I know where to go that the man won't yell at me. And like, I take, those small mercies.
Yeah.
And I think that the thing you have to remember is that it gets easier, but my actions are never innate.
I like that. Yeah. I can relate to that, but I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't go on cruise control. It's not like when I go to America and I like roll the window down and I just drive because I know where I'm going. Like I don't have to think about where I'm going. I don't have to put the GPS on. I don't have to pay attention. I just drive. It's like second nature.
Do you miss that?
At times I miss it. I go home every summer. I have a house back in Michigan, so I do fill my cup with that every summer. It's almost like my brain gets this like reprieve, because I think being an expat, I always have to think. Yeah. Like, even though I know what I'm doing, my brain is always thinking. Yeah. Like I don't have that ability to just walk into the grocery store and know exactly where something is going to be, because where I would think it would be is never where it is. So I have to remember that they put the orzo pasta in the soup section here and not with the rest of the pasta. It's just, so my brain is always thinking. I know that's a terrible example, but it's kind of.
I totally get that. Yeah. Hey, you're talking to somebody who lived in China for a couple of years. Yeah, I totally understand that. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So that's the, I think when we talk about like the mental tiredness is that you're always like, before I have a conversation with someone, I have the conversation with myself in my head. Like what I'm going to say before I say it.
That makes sense. I get it. Yeah.
I don't just walk in and say, I need whatever. I say, it doesn't come out right. Yeah. So that's, Yeah.
How about your family? Do you think they feel the same way?
The kids do.
Yeah.
I think my husband
does. Even though they pretty much spent their whole life overseas, right? They've never lived in the States.
Yeah, but they have to keep learning different languages too.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, we're lucky where we live. I mean, to be honest, we live in an area of Switzerland that's very good about, there's a lot of foreigners living in Zug because there's a lot of multinational companies here. And so we're pretty lucky. Like everybody pretty much can speak English. If I really need to, like, I can get by. Like my broken German, they realize I'm terrible at speaking German, and they'll switch to English pretty easily, which is why my German is so bad, because I can never get to that next level. Yeah. But I think the kids also probably feel it too, because I wonder, and I probably feel this, I wonder if they ever feel 100% themselves, because they can't. They're always second guessing or they're not asking the question, or they're not engaging with somebody because they can't communicate, and I know that that's our own fault. I mean, they are taking German lessons at school, and my younger one is doing really well in German, and the older one is like almost fluent in Spanish. So they're different kids, right? And they have these different they're excelling at different things. But yeah, I think if you can't 100% be who you are, which is one of the things that I'm always trying to tell people, is like, you've got to be who you are. That's why I'm always like, I'm terrible at German. I'm really trying.
Yeah.
So I will try. But yeah, I mean, you sometimes get frustrated and you just want to give up.
We've talked about this before, especially with Sunday too. Like, you know, my struggles, because now that I'm back in the States, I feel this sense of imposter syndrome. Like I'm talking about living overseas, yet I'm not living overseas now, even though I've spent close to 30 years, you know, on and off overseas. Do you ever feel that way? Do you have any sense of imposter syndrome? Do your kids have any sense of your husband? Like, who is that real, or?
Well, I mean, I don't feel like an imposter. I just feel like, because I am living.
You're doing it, so yeah, right? That's why I'm asking that, because you're not. To me, you're not an imposter. You're just doing what expats do.
Yeah, I'm just really a bad linguist, and it's not, you know. Yeah. My friend is trying to get me to take a conversation class, and I'm just like, oh my God, my brain already hurts, and I'm not even there yet. But yeah. But I think it's like, I don't feel like an imposter, but I feel there's like, I wish that I could let them see who I really am. Like, I wish that there was this where I could bridge the gap, so like they could really see who I am. Yeah. But I have a feeling that if I actually did speak German really well, they still would think I'm crazy. So that might not
oh my God.
bridge the gap, you know?
That's a whole different podcast. We talked about that.
Right. I mean, even though, because of who I am and how I was brought up, it's just different culturally, right? Sure. So I mean, that's
fair.
It's fair, right?
Yeah, it's totally fair.
But I do try to just be who I am, even though
I have a pretty good feeling that you are who you are, no matter where you're at. So I like to think I know you a little bit, and I have a feeling you're who you are, no matter what. So, which is good. That's a good thing.
Well, if I'm not saying it, you could probably read it on my face. So that's
a good thing. Well, I was going to ask you this later, but like your kids, then they're growing up third culture kids, obviously. Right. Mm-hmm. Do they understand the magnitude or the uniqueness of them growing up? The reason growing up the way they are, the reason I ask that is because they're growing up exactly how I did. Mm-hmm. I don't know how old one was born overseas. Is that right? So they have me beat. I was 7 when we moved overseas. So, I mean, I get that, but do they understand the uniqueness, and do they understand just the impact of being a third culture kid?
I don't think that they do. Mm-hmm. I think I think that they're just so used to like, this is what we do. Like,
Mhm.
this is their normal.
Yeah.
I think the impact will be very interesting if they choose to go back to the States.
Mhm.
My oldest daughter is interested in going to university in the States.
Yeah.
And I think that could potentially, that'll magnify the differences in maybe her mindset or how she was brought up, or the cultural, but just having different cultural touch,
Mhm.
like having friends from different places, being around different languages, having more, being more conscious to be slow with people when they can't speak a language.
Mhm.
I think that those are all things that they're going to see it later on in life.
Yeah.
But they don't really know that it's happening right now.
Yeah. Well, and I can relate to that. I don't mean to cut you up, but yeah, the reason I asked that question is because that's exactly how I felt, right? I thought it was normal. I thought everybody lived overseas at one point in their life.
Mhm.
I thought everybody was living the life that I was living. And I think that's just normal for their age, especially. But like, I totally relate to that. When I came back to the States, same thing. I thought everybody was moving back for the first time. So I get that. So,
Yeah. My kids, I think what's interesting is we've got a really interesting sense of home
yeah.
within our family. We've always
What is
had,
home then? What is that? Yeah.
well, my husband and I are both from Michigan. We
Yeah.
bought, when our kids were very little, we bought my mother-in-law's, my in-laws house
Okay.
when she moved out of it. But this is a place where my kids have always known.
Yeah.
Even as babies, like they learned how to climb the stairs there. This has been a place that they've always gone to. Even before it was ours, it was part of our family.
Right.
So when we go home, our kids are like, well, when we go home back to Michigan, they have a very good sense of home, and they feel this house is home.
Yeah.
But then, when we go home to Switzerland,
Mm-hmm.
that's our home too. And I think that they have more pulls to certain different places. Like, my kids don't really remember Belgium and Mexico all that vividly, but the older one does remember Mexico, but the younger one, she was 7 when we left, so it's just not as vivid.
Mm-hmm.
But they have a very big desire to be back in South Africa. They see that as somewhere that's home. So I think home is, obviously you could talk all day about this conversation, but for us, I think that we've done at least a very good job of, like, they know that this house back in Michigan is their safe sanctuary of, like, they can always go back to it.
Yeah.
And there's memories there that have been their entire life.
Yeah.
We can see pictures of them in this house when they were little. So whether some people view that as good or bad, I have no idea. But for me, and I think with our kids, that's been a very good grounding place.
Yeah. I get that, because that's how I view even as a 40 plus something. Man, I think of my grandparents' house in the same exact way. Like that was always the constant coming. I'm not from Utah, but like coming here in the summertime because my grandparents were here. They got transferred here. That was always the constant. We'd spend 6 weeks here in the summertime. I didn't know anybody, right? It's probably very similar to your daughters, but
100%.
yeah. And I mean, this is the 80s, 90s, but my brother and I would go to the mall thinking we were American kids, and we didn't know a damn soul, right? But we would still walk the mall. We would do the things that we were supposed to technically do. But I couldn't wait to get back to Taipei. Couldn't wait to get back to Hong Kong, just because that felt normal. But that's where the memories were. Like, I can come to. That's the only place aside from my parents' house that I could just openly walk into someone's house, and that to me meant home. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's been a wonderful thing for us.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's something special about that house though. I think it's been in my husband's family.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that story. I love that you guys have that.
I mean, it's completely redone since we bought it. We redid it.
Sure.
But even other people still love that house. Like when we come home and Dave's brother and his sisters come back and his mom, like that's the congregating house. Like there's something about that house that is just really special. So I know it'll be hard one day when we have to sell it. My 15-year-old refuses to think that it's ever going to be sold.
Yeah.
But
no,
he
I
said
get that.
get a job then.
There you go. Yeah, no pressure. Look, I want to shift gears because we're 30 minutes into this now, and I want to definitely, obviously I wanted you on for a lot of reasons. I wanted you on because I totally understand how you're living, and I wanted to talk about your family, and I wanted to talk about your TCKs that you're raising. But as a badass author, I'm also an author, and you know that. So I want to brag about you. And so I'm switching the little BenThere sign up in the corner. I hope you see that now.
Yeah.
You are a published author of the book Badass Abroad: How to Get Your Expat Shift Together. What led to the book? I want to like just dive deep into that. Let's talk about the book.
Well, the book was kind of a passion project. It didn't start as like, I'm going to change the world, right? It started as a passion project. I kind of just kept getting like this nudge to tell my story. I was an accompanying spouse for a lot of years, and I got to the point where I just didn't like who I was seeing in the mirror anymore. And so I had gone through my own coaching journey, and I learned a lot.
I don't mean to cut you off, but explain that coaching journey just so people that are watching maybe not know.
So I myself had gotten a personal life coach and went through a year's program of learning about myself, a lot of self-reflection. What do I want this to look like? And like, but also at the same time, like I was putting rules and I was putting boundaries in place, and I was putting all the things in place to like shift my mindset from like I am flailing to I have control over my life and I can kick ass instead of like get my ass kicked, right? So that was kind of where I went through this process, and then I kind of was like, well, what if I thought that there was a space out in the expat world that like needed a book like this. I was like, it could be raw, it could be real, and it needed to be funny. Like I was like, if I can write this book in my voice, and write it like it's a girlfriend talking to you, because I've always written my blog.
Yeah,
I write a blog too, and
you can plug that too, by the way. I was going to get to that later, but if you want to plug that, plug away, Claire. Plug away.
I write up the blog, My Theory on Blooming, and I've done that for a really long time. But when I proposed this book to my coaching mentor, she was like, if you can write this in the authentic Hauxwell voice, then it'll be good. But you have to have it in your voice. And my blog is very much on, it's like talking with me. So like everybody that's ever read my blog that knows me personally is like, it's like listening to having a conversation with you, which is what I wanted the book to be.
Which is what makes a good writer, in my opinion, just so you know. So that's good.
Oh, thank you. But I wanted, what I wanted to do was I wanted to share my story because I wanted other people to know that, you know, it's okay to be a hot mess, and it's okay to, you know, not have your shit together. But it doesn't have to always be that way. I mean, you can grow. I'm not the same person I was when I was 20. I'm not the same person I was when I was 30. And I'm not the same person I was when I was 40. which is when I went through that journey of coaching.
Yeah.
I mean, if I look at who that person was when I finished that, this person that's in front of you today wasn't even thought about. I never thought I would have written a book. I never would have became a coach. I never would have, I didn't, though that wasn't the goal. It was, I wanted to love who the hell I was.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah.
And so that's kind of where that book came from. And I write about this in like the first page. I'm like, if I help one person, the book is worth it. Like all the midnight oil that I was being burned,
Yeah.
It was worth it.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And me, I'm a big advocate for mental health, especially people like us, right, that have spent significant amounts of time overseas. But let's get into that a little deeper then. Like, the importance of self-care, the importance of routines, the importance of admitting when you're not fine. If you don't mind, discuss how that came to be with you in terms of setting up your structure, setting up your, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think there's a bit of bravery in it. So I don't like if you don't know who I am, or don't know anything about me, I hate the word fine. And my friends even test me now with the word fine. So I don't like the word fine, because why do I want to be, if I'm fine, then why am I not saying I'm good, or I'm great, or, I'm a little tired this morning, but otherwise I'm doing good, well, why do we use I guess it's fine. I'm fine. Well, if I'm fine, it's probably not fine. Like, and I just don't like, I think it's a settling word. I think it's cover up word. It's a good camouflage. And I think we deserve it. We owe it to ourselves to be honest with ourselves. So if we can't admit, like, I'm not fine, and it's to somebody that I trust, there's a disconnect there too. So, if I'm talking to a friend and they run the other way because I'm not, rainbows and lollipops right now.
Yeah.
That should be a red flag for me for some other reasons. But, I just feel like we owe it to ourselves to be true with what we feel. And if what you feel is not great, but it's okay, but it could be better, like, don't we deserve it to try and make it better?
I love that. Yeah.
I mean, and I do think, I talked about this the other day, it's fine. It's okay. It's better. It's great, or it's good. It's great. It's awesome. Like, it's not going to happen overnight. Like, we can't shift all that overnight, but it's building the resilience. It's building, this like capability to get to where we want to be. And I just think, I don't know. I mean, I just think we're worth it.
Well, I think there's an authenticity about it, right? I think that's where it comes to play. I think you're finally being who you want to be.
Yeah. I mean,
right? That's,
people can think I'm a hot mess. I totally am sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean,
who isn't, right? Who isn't?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but there are the people out there that are really good at faking it. I was one of them.
Thank you.
For a long time.
Yeah. Me too.
I can't tell you how often I've thought, that was one of the things that got to me. I was like, I'm done with this. This is not okay. I'm not okay right now. I mean, I had a great life. Great husband, kids. Lived in a, nice house, had everything that was good. I was grateful. I just wasn't fulfilled. And I think that there was that was the shift that had to happen. I had to figure out how to get fulfilled with all the things that I had. A lot of people think that's ungratefulness. And I was like, it's not ungrateful.
No. Yeah.
And I I know I have a good life. I
Yeah.
wanted for not. It wasn't that. It was just that it needed to. I had to give myself permission to feel my feelings instead of pushing them
Oh,
down.
I totally get that. Yeah, the feels. You know me. I'm a big believer in that. Feel the feels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate the honesty and just being open and talking about that. Let's shift though. I'm going to keep the book plug up there, but let's talk about your expat coaching business now.
Mhm.
Talk about that. What's that about?
Well, I love working with expat accompanying spouses, obviously.
Mhm.
And I feel like I know how it feels.
Mhm.
So I can personally relate. So I can feel it. But I also just want a lot of those women to step into who they want to be. A lot of us are sometimes given the opportunity to reset, but in that resetting process, we kind of like lose our sense of self because maybe we walked away from a job that we loved and
Did
now
you?
we're living overseas. I walked away from a job I really liked.
Yeah.
I can't say that I would be doing it today. But I walked away. Yeah, I walked away from a career very abruptly and then didn't go anywhere. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people are, moving away from homes that they've never been away from before. Maybe they just built their dream house and now they have to leave it behind. A lot of us, we sacrifice as accompanying spouses
Mhm.
so very much. And it's not to say things are what make us, but we give up a lot. We give up our friends, we give up our families, we give up, Sunday dinners with, we give up tradition, we give up all those things. And sometimes we have to reinvent that or find what is now going to fulfill us in different ways. How do we fill those gaps? And what is it going to take to get from here to there? In a way that feels really authentic and in line with who you are.
Have you found that, or is it ongoing?
I think I'm always changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, I'm not who I was when I was 20,
Mhm.
not who I was when I was 30. I just turned 45 and
Oh, you
check
youngin'.
Yes, I'm so babyish over here. But check me in 5 years because I probably won't be the same person. And maybe I'll be moving back to the States. Maybe I'll be moving to another place. I don't know.
Speaking of which, now that you've been living the way you have, does that scare you at all? Moving back home? Home meaning in the
Oh,
States?
yeah, it scares the shit out of me.
Mhm. Why? Because I know how I felt and I still feel living here, but like what is your angle on that? I guess I should ask.
I mean, I think it's just like,
Because it's not selfish. I get it totally. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I used to think that I was selfish by being away from the States, by being away from family, all that stuff. But it's not. You still have a life to live. You still are entitled to that, right?
yeah, I mean, I'm scared, I think, from the point of like, I think I've gotten so used to
Mhm.
not having roots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I've been unrooted for so
Mhm.
long. And even when I was living in the States, my husband and I moved around the
Yeah.
US a lot. And so we never really, I mean, and we've got this root there, right?
Mhm.
But I'm kind of known as an enigma when I'm there. It's like, oh, the phantom is here
Yeah.
and she's here for a little while.
Yeah.
And I have my small community of people, but then I go away. And the ones that know me well accept that because they're like, we know when she's here, she's totally in with us. And when she's not here, we get to see her and know that she's going to come back to us. But it's just like, I don't know. It's like a weird thought of like really going, oh, this is where we're staying now. Yeah. There's no move. There's no 3 years. There's no, we need a visa to go somewhere else. There's,
it's scary. And ironic as that sounds, it's definitely scary. I can relate to that.
Yeah. And I think, going back to like the coaching part of it is we're all going through these different transitions. Yeah. So some people are now going for their first assignment. Some are been here for a little while. Some are moving to a place where their spouses are from that country. And so, you know, they're like love pats, but they're bringing families back after 15 years but they're not from there. You know, it's so interesting how many people have different transitions and different relationships with moving abroad. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's always going to be some sort of thing to think about to move forward to get to where you want to be.
Well, I like that and yeah, you're right. But I like how you said you're not the same person as you used to be. And I think that's common. And I think that's something we don't talk about enough. You're not trying to be somebody else. You're not trying to be that person you were 20 years ago. It's just life happens, you know, you learn to adjust.
When I try to be the person I was 25 years ago, I usually end up with a major hangover. So it's not.
Yeah.
Like I can't do that anymore.
No. Nor should you, right? You right. Don't have to.
But that's the thing, right? Like that's the funny part. I'm not.
But yet, do you think the people in Michigan expect you to be that same person?
No. And what's ironic is that my friends from college, like they all know, like this. I'm like the little drummer. Like I go by the beat of my own drum, right? It's like I show up. Like the other day, I just committed to like, oh, you guys are going to New York City. I can get to New York City. That's an easy one for me.
Yeah.
And I can commit to that. But when I go back to where we have our house, it's all what's funny is that it's mostly my husband's friends from high school.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have been kind of like brought into this family of people from his past that are his friends now, you know, like still friends. But it's kind of like, I'm still trying to figure out who I am and all that too, because, for the most part, they know, you know, I'm my own person, but, like whenever I'm introduced, I'm like, I'm Dave Hauxwell's wife, right? Like,
yeah.
So it's, so it's kind of a funny thing. Like, I have roots that I don't even know because they're growing off of a different part of me.
I get that. So with that said, then what advice would you give families that are either currently overseas or learning right now that they're about to move overseas? What advice would you give them in terms of just enjoying the moment, I guess? I don't know. Your own experience, what advice would you give?
I would prepare yourself to roll with the punches.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can prepare yourself, I think you and I both know that, I mean, it's like knowledge is power, right? But you don't know what you don't know either.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
Like, you can read all the books and you can do all those things, but you have to be prepared for the unexpected too, because that is going to fall on your lap. I mean, there's going to be stuff that you don't think about and you can't even imagine happening, you know?
From your own experience, can you give an example? I know I have tons, but that's why, like, as soon as you said that, I was like, ding, ding, ding. Yeah. Like what?
Yeah. I mean, so when I was pregnant, first time we moved overseas, well, the only time, I mean, the first expat assignment, we moved to Geneva. I moved over there when I was 7 months pregnant. And 6 days before I was supposed to give birth to my daughter, Addie, my father-in-law passed away suddenly. And they were actually supposed to come on a trip
Oh,
to
wow.
see us, like 4 days later. He passed away, and they were supposed to be on an airplane like 3 or 4 days later to be there when we gave birth, because we didn't have any friends. We didn't have, when we had a 2-year-old, and we needed someone to take care of her when I'm having a baby. And so you can't expect that. There wasn't like, that was something that we had never planned happening. My husband couldn't leave me. I was 40 weeks pregnant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't get to go to his father's funeral.
Oh, wow.
And this
Hence
was
the rolling with the punches. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
We buried his father on a Friday, and we welcomed our daughter into the world on Sunday.
Wow. Talk about extremes, right?
Right. I mean, and it's those high highs and those low lows, and they happened so quickly together.
Yeah.
So I think, and it was okay, pivot. Now my mom's got to come and get on an airplane, and someone still had to, it was chaos.
You adjust on the fly.
You have to be willing to pivot.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's, you don't want to expect those things, and you can't worry about stuff like that. Right. Yeah. But it happens, and you have to just roll with it and be willing to change course if you have to.
Yeah. And the flip side of that is what an experience you're getting, and what an experience your kids are getting. Because I fall into that trap too. Sometimes it seems so harsh and negative and all that, but it's such a fantastic, beautiful experience that you're going through, right? Living in a different culture, learning about the way other people live and think and go about their daily lives. That's the part that I always take, to heart, because it's such a huge thing. And we tend to forget that sometimes, right? It's such a beautiful thing that you're getting to do too. So I don't want to just do it. And it's not, I don't mean doom and gloom. I just mean like we tend to forget that sometimes because we have those connections still back home that we have to be. Like you and I talked about this off, before we started. Like I came back to the States because of family issues, right? You don't have that luxury sometimes. And luckily I was in a position where I could.
Right.
But sometimes you can't, like you just talked about, and I respect that. But there's so much that you feel like you're missing out of, and yet there's so much that you're gaining that you can't replace that stuff. And your kids, what they're getting right now, I hope you realize that can't be replaced. And that's, to me, that's awesome. I could have gone through a lot of this without a lot of the struggles I had, especially when I moved back as a college student. But I wouldn't change the way I grew up for anything. And I hope your daughters see it that way too, just because they are getting to see, part of the world that many people would love to be in their position too.
Yeah. Well, if they turn out half as cool as you, Ben, I think
pretty much, I'm a badass too. I don't like to brag.
Exactly. No. So as long as we, but no, I think, yes. I mean, I do think sometimes I'm always like, am I totally royally effing these kids up?
No, you're not.
But then I'm also kind of like, I go out to dinner with friends last night, and they're like, we bumped into your daughter at the train station, and she was talkative, and she engaged with us, and she's so sweet. And she, like, and that's so nice to hear.
Yeah.
That you aren't raising like heathens. You're raising these really good kids that hopefully are going to have a different perspective than some of their peers.
Yeah.
And maybe that they can try and help that to change the world for the better.
Yeah. And I truly believe that I think in order to, what's the right term? I don't know, commit to this global epidemic of negative, right? I think you have to sometimes live outside your comfort zone and outside, your safety net of being in your own country. I think growing up globally has allowed me to appreciate and then some
Well,
Yeah.
even as an adult, I mean, I didn't grow
Yeah.
up overseas, but as an
Yeah.
adult,
Yeah.
what do you call us? Adult
ATCKs. Yeah.
ATKs. So, I mean, I've spent most of my like I consider
Adult
most of my
life.
adult life over like the first part of my adult life was not really adulting.
Yeah.
But like I mean, I have a different perspective on things when I
Yeah.
go back home or when I go to another country or, so I get that too. It does change a person. And I think it's given me a richer sense of depth of what culture can be and what I want that to be for me.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
We're gonna end on that note.
it's
It
pretty
flies
profound there.
by. It's been an hour. So yeah. What'd you say?
It's pretty profound there.
Yeah, ding, drop the mic, right? Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Claire, this is wow, you're speaking my language. This has been a treat. Thank you for doing this. And I want people to, whether you've lived overseas or not, your book is fantastic. I finally got it and I've been reading it.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, absolutely. From one author to another. Trust me, I appreciate everything. I mean, I don't obviously I'm a man and my intake and the way I read it is a little bit different, but it's still it hits home. It definitely hits home. So it's definitely worth a read, whether you live overseas or know someone overseas. It's worth a read. So
I think
congrats.
husbands could read it too.
Absolutely. No, that's what I'm connecting to it. And I definitely am connecting to, I know you personally too, but I
Right.
definitely connect to what your message is.
Yeah.
And I love it. So plus it's in your voice. I hear your voice when I read the book. So that's definitely a good thing too. So, but I can't thank you enough for doing this. I hope people read the book. I hope people watch this, but thank you so much. I
Thanks
really
for
do.
having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
That was fun.
I want to give just a quick little minute for you to tell people how they can contact you, whether social media or whatever, your blog, your website, everything. So if you don't want to, I mean, if you don't mind, to go ahead and talk about that real quick.
Yeah. You can catch me on my website at clairehauxwell.com. Or I'm on Instagram and Facebook at my I can't even talk. It's late where I am at right now.
Yeah.
At my theory on blooming. And I talk about the real stuff. I post
you do.
about dumb stuff, real
Yeah, you
stuff.
do.
But then there's like serious stuff too. Don't
There
get me
is.
wrong.
No.
But yeah, it's just a fun way of like giving you a little taste of what it's like to be living abroad or some of the things. I mean, you don't have to be living abroad to appreciate half the stuff I talk about. So
Absolutely.
yeah, you can catch me there. Love to hear from people. So yeah.
You are probably one of the most real people I've met by doing this. So thank you so much. I mean that sincerely. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks.
Absolutely. I'm gonna stop it now, but stick around. You and I can chat real quick after I stop the recording. But those of you watching, those of you listening, whatever, however you're actually hearing this, just thank you so much. This has been episode 4 of season 3 of BenThere. We'll talk later. Take care, everybody.